Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Bernette B05 Academy. In this video, I'm going to show you the accessories that come with this machine. So to start with, we have, let's go over here. We have this wonderful tray table that fits when you take off your accessory tray. This extension table is really nice for doing large projects. And it also has these lines here, I notice, 1/4 inch, 5/8 inch, and the lines extend back here. That makes it really nice for sewing straight lines along the edges of things. And then you have your quick start guide. Now for the full manual, you can go online to Bernette.com. But this is a great quick start guide, lots of really useful pictures in it. And then you have your foot control and your cord, which are attached to the same plug on the side of the machine. Okay, now we have some extra bobbins that come with your machine. These are class 15 bobbins, so if you need more bobbins, make sure you get plastic class 15 bobbins. Or if you're not sure, you can always just bring in one of these bobbins here to the store and we'll get you a set of bobbins that are the right kind. Okay. This is your regular sewing foot. It has a T right there, and this is what you're going to use for most of your general all-purpose sewing. The next foot over is similar, but it has this little groove here. Now the groove is for sewing things where you have like a short zigzag and you're putting, like for applique, and you're putting a lot of thread into your fabric. You want to have somewhere where that can just flow right on through. So, and it's also nice to have this open toe here. That means that if you're trying to sew right, like in the well of a seam, you can see where your needle's going. So this is a really useful foot. I'm going to put the regular sewing foot on the machine, and you can see how I'm doing that. I'm lining up those holes where it sews, dropping the presser foot, and it goes right on like that. Okay, the next thing is this little tool. Now, what's this good for? As you can see, it has thinner, medium, and really thick. What this would be good for is if you're hemming up jeans and you've got this flat felled side seam and you're putting up that hem, your foot tends to want to kind of bog down right there. I'll show you kind of how it does this. And it may have trouble getting up over that, so I'm going to lower my needle and put this little tool behind the foot to level it out. The nice thing about that is now the tool is actually pressing the fabric against the feed dogs in back, so the feed dogs are totally engaged and it can level out and go right over that thick seam. So it's a really nice tool to have. Okay, and versatile since you have the different heights that you can do. Now this is another useful foot that has this little bar in here. What's that for? Well, first of all, you don't want to be sewing on that bar. This is actually meant for doing a zigzag on the edge of fabric. And you have fabric that maybe tends to get a little scrunched up at the edge when you do a zigzag over the edge, but you want to zigzag it to keep it from fraying. So using this foot, it gives you some slack in the thread and will help it be nice and flat when you're zigzagging thinner fabric like this. The next one is your blind hem foot. Now the blind hem, there's a stitch on here that you would use for that. I believe it's J is what you would use. And a blind hem looks like this. You don't even see the stitches on this side. It's actually formed on the back. Using the blind hem foot, it would go like that. And this is adjustable. This is a nice feature to have to make it, depending on your thickness of your fabric, you can adjust it whichever way you need to and do a nice blind hem. This is a button sewing foot. Now if you have a button that has holes in it like this, you can put your button right under there and these grippy toes hang onto your button. What you do is lower your feed dogs, go to a zigzag stitch, and then you start out carefully, but you make sure that your stitch width is such that each needle, the needle goes through each hole, and that will affix your button. So that's what this is for. And then for sewing buttonholes, we have the buttonhole foot. I have another video on how to use this. But buttonholes are basically like this, and it makes a one-step square-ended buttonhole using this foot here. Then this foot is nice for making pin tucks. So you have your folded fabric, you'd put your fold of fabric right along that flange in the center, move your needle over to the left, and it'll make a nice even distance between the fold in the fabric and your stitch. This is also good for some edge joining purposes too. I'll put that back in the center there. Now this is a great foot for sewing on vinyl and leather or anything that tends to be a little grippy and tends to want to stick on the bottom of the foot. This will help it slide right through. It's a Teflon coating on the back of that, and you can do a zigzag in there too. So this one is your rolled hem foot. And this is a rolled hem. I did this on this machine here, and see how nicely it made that. That's with just a regular stitch on the center needle position. Everything's normal. You just use this foot, and it curls the edge of the fabric and stitches it just in the right place. So it's a really nice little foot to have here. This is for sewing zippers on, and you can put it on either side. Either clamp it on the left side or the right side, depending on which side of the zipper you're sewing on, and if you're sewing close to those zipper teeth, you can do that. Now, notice again, each of these feet have this bar, so it's quick and easy to change the feet on your machine. This one is for sewing invisible zippers, and those of you who know how to sew invisible zippers, you would have the teeth go right along there. It stitches close to those teeth, and it makes it look like you don't even have a zipper on that seam. It's really a nice feature to have, and nice foot to have for this machine. This is your free motion quilting foot. It's also known as the darning foot. What it does is you would lower your feed dogs, and every time the needle goes up, it pushes this up and pushes this part away from your fabric. So you actually are using your hands to do free motion. Free motion, in case you don't know, looks like this. This is an example of free motion. You can draw hearts and flowers and stars, any kind of thing that you want to, using your hands. This is the foot you would use. Then you've got a couple of screwdrivers. One's a metal one, and one's one that has these plastic ears on it, and it helps you get some good torque. Now this one is nice for if you need to adjust your bobbin for some reason. I would, if you're not familiar with that procedure, just don't do it. But if you do need to, and you know how to do it, that's the little screwdriver right there that you would use for that. Then we have our brush and seam ripper. Now the seam ripper is what you'd use for opening those buttonholes once you've sewn them. And then also for unpicking seams, if you need to unstitch a seam, this is what you use. Okay. Then we have extra needles. Now, Oregon is a good brand of needles. Also, we have Schmetz and Classe needles. Either of those would be good. So use good quality needles in your machine. Now, you have a size down here that's 1490. That's basically the same size. One's an American number, one's a European number, but they always go together. 1490 is a good standard size. And HA by 1 is the type of needle. It means it's pretty much a universal use needle. Then we have this quilting bar or quilting guide. And I'm going to put that back right back in here in the back of the foot holder. And what this will do is if you are quilting or you just want to do lines of stitches that are an even distance apart, you would use this. Do your first line of stitching and then follow that first line of stitching with this bar here to make your second line of stitching, and so forth. You can even use decorative stitches if you want to make a nice distance between those two without having to mark everything, right? Okay, and then this is your auxiliary spool pin. Now there are types of thread that just don't like to spiral off the end. They would rather reel off the side. This is what you would use. You'd also use this spool cap, right, like that, to make a stand for your spool, especially larger spools like this. And then we have the spool felt that you put on there. The reason for the felt is that when you stop sewing, your spool could continue to spin, but the felt acts like a brake and helps the spool stop spinning. So that's the purpose of that felt right there. Okay, now this is also good for twin needle sewing. So if you had a spool of thread here, a spool of thread here, you could do twin needle sewing. Let's see, where is that? It's basically two lines of stitching parallel to each other, but you would use a twin needle, and the twin needle looks like this, and that's something that you would have to purchase separately. But you can do that and do twin needle sewing. This is an example on a different machine of twin needle sewing. As you can see, you can do some pretty nice decorative stitches that way. Okay, then we have our spool caps. Now, this, what I used for the stand, could also be a spool cap. I'm going to take that off of there. If you had a large spool of thread that you're putting on here, you'd want to use a large spool cap so that the ends of the thread would go past the ends of the spool cap. So you want to match it. If you have a medium-sized spool, you can turn it around and have this end be. Now, if you have a very small spool of thread like this, you can use this to be your spool cap. The purpose of the spool cap on the horizontal pin is to keep your thread from flowing off the end of the pin. Now, if you have thread like this, and this is Mettler thread, it just happens to be a larger size of this brand of thread, this doesn't have an end cap. So what you'd do is you'd put this on here, and you'd put the little teeth of that spool cap right in the end, and that will hold the spool on there. Okay, now what about this net here? What in the world is that for? Well, sometimes you have this slickery thread that it sits there and just wants to unspool by itself. So when I put this on my machine, I would put, well, this is a little longer than what you'd need to. I'm folding it in half because it's longer than what I need for this size of spool. Some of your decorative spools are real tall. But I have this on here. Now I can put that on there, and it just keeps all that thread nice and organized and lets it flow off nice and smoothly, but it's going to keep the thread from unspooling by itself. So that's what this net is for. Then we have an oiler. Now this is good quality sewing machine oil that if you need to oil your machine, you want to use good quality sewing machine oil. So that's what that would be for. Okay, so that is your basic accessories that come with your machine. I hope this has been a helpful video, and if it has, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have lots of other videos on this machine and on other machines here on our Montavilla YouTube website. So keep watching. Thanks for watching today. Bye-bye.